call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
Keir Starmer has to be the most hated newly elected Prime Minister in history, and that's just over 2 months since this awkward nasal warmonger became Prime Minister. In that time, we've seen the middle class media of this country engaging in levels of shilling exceeding what we're told to expect from MAGA or whatever. I'm supposed to laugh at Trumpers wearing ear bandages like Donald is the Messiah when we've got the British media's finest writing articles behind a paywall, mind you, how Starmer's victory has, and I quote, turbocharged their arousal levels to the point they're having to excuse themselves from social gatherings to, I mean, you need to be sectioned. Gulag maybe. Just listen to what this journalist asked Starmer after he terrifyingly announced to the country that things will only get worse.
About the choices that we face, how tough this will be. And frankly, things will get worse before they get better.
Spent a lot of time today looking back in anger, but are you happy that Oasis has decided to reform on your watch?
What can I say in relation to that? It's very, very good.
What happened to change? I mean, Keir keeps saying how awful it's going to be for everyone and how they're going to have to be unpopular and make unpopular decisions. You just got elected. What's the point of democracy? Are we now electing people to do things we don't want them to do? Or actually maybe Keir's referring to the fact that he actually has no real democratic mandate. After all, his spectacular win was accomplished with a significantly lower share of the popular vote than Jeremy Corbyn's, whose election results were described by our media and commentators as a complete disaster. Who's the unelectable one again? The funny thing is, in the precious little moments we've seen where he's been confronted with even a little bit of resistance, nervous Keir buckles and cowers under the pressure. I mean, he is a complete dumpster fire in terms of debate, in terms of media management, in terms of PR. Some say his boring persona is a ploy to disarm voters, just like Boris DeFeffel Johnson's clownery was. Maybe. But the thing is, it's looking increasingly likely that it means f*** all either way. Because in the 4 or so years that he's been most in the public eye, he's been preserved and touted by the media. If you haven't done the research, unfortunately as many if not most won't have, you wouldn't know. His background, the countless U-turns, the lies that this man has told in order to get elected Labour leader and then Prime Minister. Given this reality, let's once more delve deeper into important facts about who Keir Starmer is beyond the carefully and meticulously crafted image created and protected by this country's media, as well as what's to come. It's very important to realise that this is not simply the story of a man who wanted power at any cost. When you delve into this man, you realise there's almost nothing you can attribute to him in terms of his values or his ideas. He is bereft of them, and is actually literally a proxy for the British establishment and secret services. Let's start with the Zionist lobby, for one. Before claiming that he is a Zionist without qualification, and before that infamous interview, Keir Starmer, then a candidate for his constituency, presumably as a ploy, actually attended and argued in favour of the expulsion of apartheid Israel from FIFA. Such is the trademark Machiavellianism you can come to expect of him, which I covered in a previous video. In fact, according to Declassified UK, 13 of 25 of Starmer's cabinet are financially backed by Israel lobbyists. I don't know if it's better or worse, but considering we're talking about Britannia's political elite, they're actually surprisingly cheap. I mean, compared to their American counterparts. Democrats and Republicans rake in hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions to defend Israel. Are our lot just more enthusiastic in their Zionism? Maybe it's just good old-fashioned British etiquette to not ask how much your colleagues or mates are pocketing, but it's not just that Starmer takes blood money or that he has a sugar daddy who buys him thousands of pounds worth of designer suits, glasses and underwear for his wife. He's been up to some dodgy shit for a long time. Evidence of his history as a Secret Service spook run as far back to when he was a young man. Here he is pictured in files kept by the former Czechoslovakian Secret Service in a directory titled Foreign Intelligence with all of his personal details. As the head of CPS, he led the persecution of Julian Assange, and in a Freedom of Information Act request, it was found that CPS, for some reason, destroyed files relating to a number of trips Keir made to the United States in meetings with US officials, thought to be in regard to the pursuit of Assange. It's also believed that these visits were linked to his membership of the Trilateral Commission, a cool secret club which at one point included the likes of Kissinger, Epstein and Bush. It was also revealed that while part of Corbyn's shadow cabinet and a whole 6 months before the 2019 general election, Keir Starmer actually began to set up his own Labour leadership team, something which happened at around the same time Mike Pompeo of the Trump government outrageously and disturbingly stated this in regards to the possibility of Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister. It could be that Mr. Corbyn manages to run the gauntlet and get elected. It's possible. You should know. We won't wait for him to do those things to begin to push back. We will do our level best. It's too risky and too important and too hard once it's already happened. But Keir Starmer's got some other dodgy links, not just to establishment politics, but establishment media. As far back as 2009, Keir Starmer has rubbed shoulders, schmoozed and enjoyed the hospitality of the English-speaking world's most powerful right-wing media guy, Rupert Murdoch, well before entering politics. So yeah, Keir Starmer's a shiftier fella for more reasons than we may probably ever know. But we don't need to know everything about his past, just take a look at what he's done so far and what he's planning to do. Let's first address his primary justification for the terrible dark years to come under the Starmer regime. Look, there is no doubt that the Tories engaged in outrageous acts of theft against the British taxpayer for one, in awarding huge government contracts and grants to friends and family of Tory MPs. We know this just by looking at the billions that disappeared in alleged PPE contracts for a start. But after pledging at least billions of pounds a year to the war machine for as long as it takes, Keir Starmer and the Labour Party have begun their tough decisions campaign by taking away winter fuel payments from millions of pensioners, a move that, according to Labour's own research, would cause the death of around 4,000 OAPs. And back onto the topic of the NHS, Keir Starmer has stated what many have known for a long time: the NHS has been and will continue to be for sale. No more money for the severely underfunded and understaffed NHS without reform, he says. His reform, of course, being further outsourcing to private companies. No wealth tax on the top 1% of earners, which would raise billions. In fact, if the government taxed the 160 or so billionaires living in the UK with a 5% wealth tax, and being very conservative and only taxing income over $1 billion, assuming an average of £3.8 billion worth of assets per billionaire, this could theoretically raise over £22.4 billion. And remember, I'm not even talking about taxing multimillionaires and clamping down on tax evasion and dodgy accounting by huge corporations. And don't get me started on how much we'd save by scrapping Trident, which, by the way, doesn't make us safer. What does all of this mean? Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves are choosing to screw the everyday worker, the poorest and the vulnerable. But anyway, let's move away from what could have been and pivot to what's to come. What is behind the refusal to up public spending? I mean, aside from claiming that they will nationalise rail, which I hope they will, there's been a clear refusal to commit to the renationalisation of other public services. The reason is something called BlackRock.
BlackRock is a financial giant. It's the largest investor on planet Earth with over $9 trillion in assets. That's a pile of cash equal to about 1/10 of a year's global economic activity. That means the money managers at BlackRock have a big say in how the world runs.
Labour, aiming to avoid tax increases or austerity, proposes a model where the government uses public funds to attract private investment. The idea is to leverage £3 of private capital for every £1 in public subsidies. However, this approach will involve the privatisation of key sectors like housing, health, education and green energy, all while using taxpayer money as incentives. BlackRock and other asset managers are eager to own and manage our public infrastructure, transforming it into a source of revenue. If you've seen my video on Tony Blair, you might notice that this sounds a lot like his government's controversial PFIs. And you'd be right. By de-risking investments, the state would guarantee financial returns for these companies, creating long-term profit streams. Ethical and people-centered government policy is past due, and no amount of Keir claiming that he's putting government at service to the people will disguise or justify his granny-freezing neoliberal doomerism. He does not need to make these so-called tough decisions for the good of the country. He wants to continue funding a genocide. He wants a nuclear standoff with Russia. He wants to make you pay for healthcare, wants people to keep buying him VIP Arsenal and Taylor Swift tickets, and he wants Armani suits to cover up his titties. He wants to make these decisions, which are easy for him and tough for us. I didn't vote for him though.